What's up, everybody? Welcome. It's time for a little bit of Orangebloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. Solid. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, just push a bunch of buttons. Make sure you come back to Orangebloods Live in the future. Talking lots of Texas football today. It is a very newsy day. Kyle Flood, Texas offensive coordinator and offensive line coach. Strange to think about what his actual titles are. Talked to the media in the last 30 minutes. We'll get down into some breakdown there. The Longhorns have added a late member to the 2026 recruiting class. There's lots of stuff going on in 2027. John Meredith news. Big time, 5-star difference maker. So lots of things for us to dabble in. Let's start with Kyle Flood real quick before we get into the recruiting news and the roster additions and what Texas is doing really with like its last 15 or so roster spots, I think is really interesting. But Kyle Flood spoke with the media today. In fact, the rest of the offensive staff is talking to the UT media at this very moment. So whether it's Banks or the new running backs coach or Chris Jackson or even the assistant quarterbacks coach, Bamonte is like going to have a chance to do some interviews today. So lots of stuff we'll keep an eye on throughout. Flood, you know, like what are the bullet points? John Turntine looks good, 292 pounds. They think his frame looks good. Young guys, he mentions Jackson Christian. He mentions Jordan Coleman, which isn't a big surprise. Those two guys have both had good springs, and Jordan Coleman, probably the most discussed of the young guys that are in the program. I thought it was really interesting, and I'm curious to see the full transcript. He didn't say Jaden Chapman's name in anything that I saw in terms of what was coming down on social media and on Orangebloods in real time as these things were taking place and as I was going through teams and just kind of communicating. Man, that's the guy they need to really step up. And, you know, he kind of went one by one through the offensive line, and he certainly, I think, projected confidence in what he has, but there's no getting around the fact that right now it seems like the two guys that he feels best about among the non-notables is Jordan Coleman and Jackson Christian, and neither of those guys is ready to play at a reasonably high level. They're guys that need to be getting a little bit of work this season. You know, you want to break them in and then get them into a position where maybe in 2027 they can have a much bigger role. But I think Kyle Flood, without trying to do so, just further reinforced today how little offensive line depth truly exists. He's happy. He thinks they're doing well. But the reality is I did not see Kyle Flood answer a question or give an indication that he thinks he's got X amount of starters or – you know, it's one thing to say Jordan Coleman's had a good spring. It's another thing to say we think he's good enough that if we play him against Ohio State week 2 in September, we're good. Not trying to cause anybody to hit the panic meter. In a lot of ways, this is stuff that we already know. But I don't know. Maybe there's a world. Maybe this is just a me issue. Maybe I was hoping, because that's the thing. Like, what was I hoping for Kyle Flood to say? That's a great question that I just asked myself. I don't know. Deep down, I want, this is my confirmation bias. This is me channeling you guys. What I want is somebody on that offensive line to be better than we hope and think he is, right? So if Jordan Coleman's the guy, I don't mean to be dismissive of the second-year player with no game experience who wasn't a big-time prospect, and that doesn't mean that the guy can't be a really good college player, but there's usually a pathway and a time frame for these types of prospects to go, and you know, I think there's a reason why 14 months into his career he didn't say today, if we call on Jordan Coleman against Ohio State, we win the game, or we won't lose the game because of that. I think there are still a long ways to go, but I thought in hearing him break down the offensive line, I don't know, man. I want him to make me feel a little better. Tell me, lie to me about Jordan Coleman. Bring up Jaden Chapman and say, By God, he's a fourth-year junior. And did you see what Connor Robertson did in this place a year ago as a fourth-year junior? We think Jaden Chapman is going to be this year's Connor Robertson. That I might have circled that comment and talked about it and said, that's a big statement to some degree, but it would have been nice to hear it. I don't know that Kyle Flood had a pick-me-up today as best as he tried. It just kind of is what it is. I'm curious now to see what the rest of the position coaches say about the offense, knowing that it's been as disjointed at every level from quarterback to the running backs have all been there, which is like the only consistent part of the offense that you would say. There really haven't been any offensive line injuries. I know that Jackson Christian did get banged up a little bit, but by and large, the five that they did have coming into the spring have been the five. I don't know. The other thing is, like, I get when Kyle Flood says that getting to go against Colin Simmons every day makes the tackles on his team better. No, not automatically. Not automatically. I can remember when I would go down to Clark when I was a student at Texas, and I would play against like the Chico Vasquez's and the Chris Clacks and the current players that were there when I was there. You know, occasionally you just get a game. Playing against those guys didn't make me better. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. When I played against better players in basketball, I just got exposed for like my limitations as a player. Happened that way in football too. It was amazing. You put future NFL players on that AISD Nelson Field playing field, and like you just don't, it doesn't make you better. It doesn't. You can go against a future NBA or NFL player. The margins, really fine margins. So I don't know. I think part of what the messaging has been for the offensive coaches all spring long, the last 6 weeks, is to project that everything is fine. But like none of these dudes are playing together. They ultimately will need to play together. And we've just tried to talk ourselves into Arch being involved in 7-on-7 is one of the great victories of this spring because he's not working out with his projected starting offensive line on the left side or the offensive line as a whole. And he hasn't taken snaps in teamwork where Brandon Baker's not his tackle, but his left guard or his right guard. And by the way, Flood talked about Baker as well and making the move and said it was going fine. You know, like Flood didn't say anything today that's alarming. It really does fall into the, well, what didn't he say? And I'm talking about a lot of the things that he didn't say. It's the end of the spring. I would have really hoped Jaden Chapman was better than this. He's the one guy on the scholarship board that when you look at, you go, well, he's not a second-year player. He's not asking Jordan Coleman, a teenager, to be a grown man when maybe he's not ready. He's a freaking fourth-year junior. He was on the 2 deep a year ago. Come on, baby. Get a little bit better. And yet that wasn't exactly conveyed today. We'll see what the rest of the position coaches say. Moving along. So I thought this was really interesting. Texas added a member of the 2026 recruiting class, right? The guys are already on campus. They took a late guy. They took a flyer on a guy. I'll be completely honest. Never heard of him. Never heard of him. That doesn't mean that he can't play. It doesn't mean that I know everything. But I'm pretty sure he did not have a Rivals.com player page until he committed to Texas. Because I looked him up in Google, and it didn't pop up when I typed in Brinley Tita, a kid out of Humble Summer Creek, right down the street from where I am right now. 6'2", 225 edge. So this one's fascinating to me because he's one of these guys that's going to be the 80th through 100 or the 85th through 105 guy on the roster. He is an elevated preferred walk-on, if you will. And the program doesn't have it is, if you look at the walk-ons from a year ago that were scheduled to return this year, I don't think there's any edges. I don't remember there being any edges. So we know that they wanted to sign a guy in the portal at edge. We know that they tinkered around with guys. This is an interesting take for me because I don't know what he does for Texas. He last year was a 6'2", 225-pound interior defensive lineman for Summer Creek. So the conversation on this spin, to some degree, if you will, is that Summer Creek was so good last year that they could play their best player or one of their best players out of position because they had the luxury to do so. If you're telling me this guy's a college edge, but his high school team played him inside, you are telling me something about him without telling me something. This goes back into don't tell me what you said, tell me what you didn't say. And this guy's talent's really interesting. He's the kind of guy that I would have seen a lot 30 years ago in the AISD. 225-pound interior defensive lineman. He oftentimes isn't looking to engage at all physically. He's trying to use his hands. He's trying to keep his body off of guys. He's a good athlete, but he's not a plus athlete. He didn't have a major college offer until this month. I think Texas offered him on April 7th. He comes in. It's not about this year, right? Clearly. He could have been a 5-star, and I don't know that he's getting on the field with the edges on this team this year. But I don't know what he is. I guess if this is what, there's just been a lot of question about what do you do if you're Texas, 85 through 105. I'm having this conversation on Orangebloods right now with subscribers who are like, this guy's just a preferred walk-on type, and we don't ever need him to play. He needs to be a hard worker and go to class and be a good scout team player. And it might be that is the only thing that Texas is looking for here. We've got to have a guy that can be a scout team guy, be physical, take a beating. He'll be here to take a beating for the rest of the decade. Fair enough. Fair enough. And when you look at last year's roster, there certainly would have been guys as walk-ons in this position. I guess my only question is this. Some of this comes down to finances, because the question I have would be, now you've got 20 additional scholarships. You don't have 20 more players because you used to have a roster with 125, 130 players on it. Granted, 50 of them were walk-ons, or 40 or 45 or whatever the number in any given year might be. Those are gone. You only get to keep you get to roughly keep 50% of this walk-on pool, numbers-wise, that you used to keep before. So your numbers have gone down in terms of the overall volume of bodies that are involved in the program. Scout team type stuff more than anything else. Just guys, who are your Rudies, right? I'm not a fan of using one of 20 extra scholarships on a player that I don't know has any upside at Texas as an edge. So they've recruited him as an edge. He's 6'2", 225. He's basically a poor man's Justice Finkley. And Justice Finkley was 6'2", 250. Similar type games, but not explosive enough as an athlete to even give a poor man's representation of Colin Simmons at one edge, but not big enough to give you what Lance Jackson and or Richard Wesley are giving you at kind of the traditional strong side defensive end. Brindley really is a little bit of a tweener. And I think it's awesome that he got a scholarship. This guy literally had no Power 4 offers, none. And in April of his senior year, this is unheard of. This is unheard of. This doesn't happen. And only the new rules in college football, and I would offer only the non-portal spring would even allow for this to happen. So he's probably a guy that's an elevated preferred walk-on. I think his ceiling athletically, because of his frame and his position and just like using some common sense and common knowledge here. I can't even count on one hand. I don't know that I need 5 fingers to count the number of guys who were interior defensive players in high school who spun out. That never happens. I don't know. When was the last time I saw a defensive tackle spin outside the edge? And if Texas, if Alan Clark or Will Muschamp or Steve Sarkisian wanted to position it as, we think this guy's got untapped ability, he's been playing out of position, you watch. You just haven't seen him do and be where he can be. Okay. But this is a school. Let me tell you why this is fascinating. Because Sark in the portal doesn't like to use scholarships on players who are not major conference players. He just doesn't. He'd just rather have a failed LSU or Alabama guy than he would to go down to McNeese State to get somebody, especially up front. What do we know about Kyle Flood and Texas in general that they love more? They love size. They're not trying to get little dudes, really. Really. Kyle Flood has an offensive line type. We know what that is. It ain't small. And when Texas does traditionally, under Flood, go after a smallish offensive lineman, you go, interesting. He must be really good for them to just completely bypass what their instincts are. We know that, look, if you're going to be Colin Simmons, which is what this kid is physically coming out of high school, 6'2", 225, very Colin Simmons-ish. Man, you better be a blur off the edge. You have to be lightning fast, quick, and athletic to make it at the highest of high levels with that kind of frame. It just is what it is. Like, this is not, I'm not even being like critical. I feel like the earth is round. I just feel like we're talking about some pretty basic stuff that, like, look, strong side defensive ends in the SEC don't usually come in at 6'2", 225. But that's kind of what I think he's going to be asked to do. Could he grow into a 5-tech? I don't think he's big enough to play further inside than that. He couldn't play. I don't know. It's just really interesting. And it comes down to, in those 20 extra scholarships that you have, and this guy's going to be a scholarship player, how big do you go? I had a longtime Orangebloods subscriber, Horn number one. He drives me batshit crazy sometimes as a poster, but he's been on Orangebloods forever. He's a really good poster. Again, drives me crazy, but really good poster. And he was like, what you got to do with those extra 20 spots is go out and get low-level D1 or high-level D2 guys and build up the bottom of your roster, make it better that way. And I'm like, your scout team's, my reaction to that is your scout team's not getting better by taking more preferred walk-on types. You're just taking preferred walk-ons and putting them on scholarship. You're not making the program better. That's not what you're doing. You already had that. You've lost half of that talent pool. This is a chance to upgrade the talent from 86 through 105. I don't know that occurred with this edition. If I'd been with Alan, if Alan Clark was talking to the media today, I would have asked him about this kid. He's signed, or he's committed. I don't know if he's technically signed. He'll be here this summer. Their approach, I get it because they don't want to spend money. But you don't have to take preferred walk-on types to escape not having to pay guys. It's really curious to me. I think they just have more. It also, one of the really interesting things about taking Tita here, right? They only get 105. We know that they've got a ton of walk-ons that have been returning to try to earn a spot in the 105. Sarkisian's kid is one of these guys. And they've never hammered down exactly how many scholarship numbers will not be used, which would allow the walk-ons, a select number of them, to take that spot. One of the intellectually questionable things that has been suggested is that this kid, and look, he's an edge, so it does make him different, I think, than the other players at this position that Texas would have had available in a scout team capacity this season. They just haven't, they're not deep there. And I wondered, would they go get a guy in the portal just to give them some depth? You know, for instance, they may go after Darius Snow, the kid out of Michigan State, to give them depth at linebacker. He's in the portal, just waiting for somebody to give him a tangible opportunity, and he may find that at Texas. There's some edge guys with that kind of profile, but I don't know that Texas necessarily wants that. If this guy's about a future edge player who's going to be a hard worker and like make the program stronger in the sense of he brings character to the table, he'll be taking the spot, presumably, of some walk-on who is already doing that. I mean, there's going to be some guys that practice or practicing today that are hopeful of getting a walk-on spot, one less spot. Why? This guy might take it. And look, I think it's one of the coolest stories I've heard in the 30 years I've been doing this. It reminds me of in 1990, the summer of 98, Texas offered Jason Barron. You guys remember that name? Remember Jason Barron from Brownwood? There were a number of guys at Brownwood that year. There was the quarterback. Was it Colby or Kirby? Which one came first? I think it was Colby. Colby was a quarterback. There was a linebacker whose last name I think was Morris. God, I'm getting old, and I'm only remembering pieces of this. And then there was Jason Barron. He was a fullback. Mac Brown had this reputation of, if you show up at summer camps, it doesn't matter how good your film is, it doesn't matter what your recruiting profile is, go win a scholarship at these June summer camps. And sometimes Mac would just make some wild offers. Wild offers. His coaches would like cringe at times going into June, like, oh, come on, don't mess up. I'm working. I got guys I want. And then some kid shows up in June and pops off a 4.3 and Mac wants him. And like, that's that. I think Gerald Hansen was a wide receiver that did something similar like that in camp. So Jason Barron shows up, and you know what his claim to fame was? He was a roofer. He was a roofer who played college football, or he played high school football at Brownwood at a time when Brownwood had a couple of other guys that Texas was recruiting. They took Jason Barron as a fullback, and the scouting report on him was, dude, that kid lives in West Texas, and he's a roofer. That kid gets on the roof in the middle of the summers. Can you imagine how tough he must be? And we think he's a pretty good football player. Like, we got to have that kind of guy in our locker room. They gave that kid a scholarship. They gave that kid a scholarship on the basis that he roofed in the summer. And look, how interesting of a story is that? It's nearly 30 years later, 28 years later, and I can't remember the guys that he played with, but I can remember Jason Barron's name. This kid's story is wild. Wild. I don't know what he was going to do if Texas doesn't offer him a scholarship. He has no other Power 4 conference offers. He's just kind of waiting to see like what opportunities might come out. And then Texas, not Baylor, not SMU, not even Texas State. Texas. It's an incredible story. I hope this kid tears it up. There'll be nobody that roots for him more than I will root for him. I just wonder, are there not better guys that Texas could be taking? I mean, but I'm an asshole, and I think of things like better. And it might be that this guy's like a future captain of the team. We will see. I was shocked when I watched film this morning. I would love to give the coaching staff some truth serum and just go, so what's up? Why? And I don't mean that to sound condescending. Like, I don't mean for it to. I realize it does. This one I don't get. And then 30,000 feet up, we're nitpicking the 95th guy on the roster, right? Let's some perspective here. But it's news. It happened, and it is extraordinary in the sense of it is, we see those stories where the walk-ons get handed the scholarships. We've seen that a million times. Team gets together. Coach is giving a speech. He calls the player up. Player comes down. He tells him he's on scholarship. Crowd goes crazy. The player's mobbing. We've seen these videos. I'll bet you $1,000 that when Texas offered this kid at like 9 days ago, I'll bet you $1,000. I shouldn't do that, actually. Let me strike that from the record. Last time I bet $1,000 to an imaginary person who didn't accept, wasn't here to actually like tell me he's accepting the deal. I actually had to pay $1,000. So I bet you an imaginary $1,000. I got to learn. When that kid was offered the scholarship, I think, again, April 7th, I bet he told somebody in his family and they didn't believe him. That's how unlikely this is. It is. Imagine you are a high school football player who doesn't sign for the second signing day and you ain't got nobody knocking on your door. All your friends that are signing with lower level schools, they sign, right? All of the headlines and the players and all the good players are already on campus by the time the second signing period in February rolls around. This kid signed nowhere. Can you imagine approaching him at spring break, the last spring break of his senior year? Everybody remembered when they were seniors in high school, what they tried to do in their last spring break of their senior year in high school? I didn't do anything fun. Probably watched college basketball because I was lame. Oh, but in my head, I was doing things. Imagine coming to this kid a month ago and saying, hey, I am Ketch, your fairy godfather. And I have a little secret for you. You just stay out of trouble, keep lifting weights. In a month from now, oh, you're going to love it. You're going to have a major Division I offer, like a Power 4 offer to come play football on scholarship. How you like them apples? And the kid would have been blown away. What Power 4? You start thinking about what is Power 4? Okay, it's the Big 10, it's the ACC, it's the Big 12, and it's the SEC. When you don't have any offers at all, you probably start small. You're thinking, well, Cincinnati, Minnesota, Wake Forest. Texas. It is. Look, it's an amazing story. I mean, it's a Disney book. It's like a Disney movie. Remember the rookie that came out with Dennis Quaid, and it was like a 40-something-year-old guy making it to the majors. He was a pitcher who was a teacher from Texas. This is kind of the same situation. Anyway, let's move on to some other recruiting news. Actually, before we do that, I want to tell you about John Meredith, and I got to tell you about Julian Caldwell, and I got to do the things that we need to do, but I should probably let everybody know about the title sponsor of the show, Texas Card House, 6 locations, Austin, Dallas, Las Colinas, Rio Grande Valley, Houston Spring. They're all everywhere. The Spring was right down the street from my house. Mention Orangebloods. Just go into any of the 6. If you're in Austin and you haven't been to the Texas Card House Social yet, I don't know what's wrong with you. You're missing out. Go have lunch, sit in the sports bar area, watch the biggest screen in Austin. Like, do it up. Do it right. Get the bad beat bacon. Just tell them you're from Orangebloods. 1 month free club membership, 2 hours of free poker. And then you can, of course, you don't even need to say anything about Orangebloods. If you want to play on your phone, on your computer, scan that QR code. Join Hijack Poker right now. You got to be inside the state of Texas, but if you sign up, you get a $20 bonus the moment you sign up. Real cards against real people for real money. Tournaments, cash games, whatever your fancy is, get it tickled with Hijack Poker. Got to be inside the state of Texas, and if you're currently sporting a gambling problem, maybe don't download that. But everybody else, download the app. John Meredith. A guy that I have argued maybe even more so than Ishmael Kamara. He's in this discussion, and Easton Royal, as maybe the most important prospects in the state of Texas this year, or that exist, period, for Texas football recruiting in 2027. The other end of the talent spectrum, from not having any major offers on the second signing day in February, this guy pretty much like close his eyes and he's going to make between $5 and $10 million in college coming out of high school. Like that's going to be in his hands. The presumptive favorite is Texas A&M. Texas has been behind in that recruitment, but they have, if you talk to anybody at Texas, they will not concede an inch. They have always felt like, okay, the response with John Meredith's recruitment has been Texas A&M is the leader. All right, we'll see. And whenever I typically get that vibe from Texas, I pay attention. This is not me being a Texas homer. This is not me with my Texas confirmation bias. This is me just paying attention to recent history. Justice Terry is a perfect example of that. Remember when nobody across the country was even mentioning Texas with Justice Terry? And I mean a day before he committed to Texas, Justice Terry wasn't getting Texas love. Everybody just thought he was going to Georgia and Texas wasn't getting any mention. And my people were like, okay, well, we'll see. It's like, oh, but the people at Rivals or the people at On 3 or the people at 24/7, like they think okay, we'll see. Cool. Thanks for your intel catch. We'll see. It doesn't happen very often. I'd have to stop and really think about like the number of times over the course of the last 3 or 4 years when it has happened. But when it happens, I don't want to say that Texas is undefeated. But it doesn't happen that often where there's just a little bit of, we can't do this, in recruiting. Is that what you're saying? We'll see. Okay, well, 5-star cornerback John Meredith was in Austin last week. He's in Austin right now. Yeah. Not that this is like the kind of thing that ends a recruitment or anything like that. But if you're Texas and you're getting John Meredith to make a second consecutive unofficial visit to Austin in the spring, yeah, you're making up ground. And I don't know how to call that recruitment. Look, Texas A&M is still a betting favorite. But for months, I've been telling people, look, don't sleep on Texas with John Meredith. Don't pay attention to anything he says. Don't look at the top 5 list. Just know that this is one of these kids that Texas feels like when they make their move, they'll be fine. We keep waiting for Texas to be wrong on one of these, right? We're one of these years where everybody gets worried about recruiting early on, and then they come in and they sign a top 5 class or a number 1 class or whatever type class it is, and then you just feel dumb for having questioned Texas football recruiting. I don't do that under Sark anymore. If they don't get John Meredith, my question is, okay, well, what 5-star are they just going to go throw a bag of money at like they did with Derek Cooper a year ago? They're going to get somebody. All right, the John Meredith recruitment is on. It's on. Texas A&M is the favorite. They will spend, I think, whatever they think is necessary in order to get that kid. Texas wants this kid bad enough that they've got him on campus 2 consecutive weekends in a row. I guess less than they've had him on campus twice in the last 7 days. I think that's right. Last 5 days? There's a long way to go in that recruitment. But if you can't see, if you aren't picking up what I'm putting down, which is picking up what they're putting down, you're just not paying attention. If I'm an Aggie right now, I don't know that I'm worried about the John Meredith recruitment, but buckle up. Buckle up. It's Cam Coleman all over again. It's going to ultimately be Texas is going to – I think John Meredith is the guy that Texas decided, we want that guy. You know, we want him. What about we want him? And I think one of the things that Texas has learned the hard way in the last couple of years is if they miss out on a him, the backup to the him ain't him. So I'm really interested to kind of see where we go here. I've been calling my shot on this John Meredith thing that, look, don't sleep on Texas. If you're sleeping on Texas after today, I can't imagine. Everybody knows now, I think, what this is. And it's the Aggies and the Longhorns truly butting heads for a guy. Big bank, little bank. I don't know how that goes. But I would love to be John Meredith's agent representative right now because you could not have more leverage. Even if that kid has no interest in going to Texas, do you know what him coming to Austin today does for his leverage with negotiating with A&M? Oh, you don't want to pay us $3 million? That's cool. That's cool. We got Sark on line 1 and Brandon Harris. They say they don't have a problem paying whatever we want. So we're cool. Hey, Aggies, we'll just call the guys in Austin if you guys don't want to. It's the dream scenario if you're John Meredith. And Rodolfo's like, A&M is paying people to visit. A lot of schools are. But like those things come in 5 figures or 4 figures, and like we're talking 7 figures. You're not wrong necessarily. Not A&M specifically. I don't want to get myself in trouble by making an allegation that I cannot prove with actual facts. People, we've been doing this since the Lake Seastrunk days back in the day, where it's like you just can't say whatever the hell you want to say because you heard some shit, no matter how good you heard it from. Look, Texas Tech is alleged to be doing this. You know, I mean, pain is pain. I'd be taking visits too if you told me if I showed up, you'd give me 10 grand. Let's go to Lubbock. Let's go to College Station. Let's go wherever I got to go to get a bag full of money that's off the books, allegedly. Rodolfo says NIL is greater than hard recruiting. Yeah, man. Truer words have never been typed. Oh, Sam, man, what are you doing here? The real ones do know me as PT. It's a very select group of people. Oh, good God. I don't understand this, Jack, by the way. Are kids like Lance Jackson scratching their heads at all? Why would they be scratching their heads? Lance Jackson is starting. I honestly am like in my head trying to think back what the conversation was 10 minutes ago that would have led to this comment in the chat. No. I don't even know what I know what the question is. I know zero context fully. No, though, I'm pretty sure. Sandman, I know you love me. I think it's funny, though, that for the rest of my life in the chat, that the PT or the PT, Pete and Tom, that story it's going to follow me now. It's like the watermelon story in Elgin. Sometimes I tell you guys things, and you guys just never forget. Did Ownwell get chewed out by any of the coaches today? I don't think so. Hold on. Let me check teams. Let me see what's going on in our teams chat. I might have missed something. Alex, nothing newsy from Jaluk, but some insightful answers. I don't see anything. No, I don't think anybody got their ass chewed. Sandman's got lots of commentary today. You're just in here, just chatting it up. You're like a chatty Cathy. I'm like pulling your string. You're just, as of now, what constitutes success for Texas football in 2026? Final Four at a minimum. Anything short of that. And this has not worked out the way that everybody planning this season inside this program. It would be a real disappointment, I think. It starts there. It's a really narrow pathway beyond that, right? From 4 to 2 to 1. But anything less than that, and I think it's going to feel like, well, they did that under Quinn Ewers, and they did that 3 seasons ago or 4 seasons ago. And, you know, it'll represent, I think, a lack of progress, which is not in year 6 what's supposed to be happening under Steve Sarkisian. Real quick, because, you know, it's important that, I haven't seen this all week long. Guys, pay attention. This is the part of the Orangebloods live experience on Thursday where I bring a little Mac Brown into your life.
We release this assessment. Good vibes only.
Lower. Time out. You can't sage away a tax hike.
Did the house come with a coach?
I usually don't help people wearing that color combination, but I like winning even more. You need Ownwell.
Right on, Coach.
Let's not get carried away. Ownwell, your home team advantage. Start saving today.
If I could get that Mac Brown bobblehead, I'd put it somewhere on the display behind me just so that we can see it. Anybody out there wants to make that happen? I kind of dig the bobblehead. Let's see. Oh, one more interesting recruiting thing today while we're on the subject of recruiting. Julian Caldwell. The Longhorns, this one is interesting to me because of Texas's placement. Julian Caldwell, arguably the number 2 wide receiver in the state of Texas, maybe number 1. It just kind of depends on beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Texas, obviously, Easton Royal is their guy nationally, although the Monshon sales kid, who's on campus literally right now, he's a big dude, very Dorial Green Beckham-ish of him at this age. Those are like the top 2 guys at the position that Texas is clearly recruiting, but they're going after Julian Caldwell, this kid from Argyle. He announces earlier today, this morning, that he's down to 3: Oregon, Texas, Texas Tech. The last time we talked to Julian Caldwell, he confessed that Texas had not had any financial discussions with him. 0. Not the case with Oregon and Texas Tech. It's a weird top 3 because 2 of those 3 teams have kind of, I think, indicated to him how important he is and kind of back that up with financial security. I don't know that that's happened with Texas, and I just don't know that they've got it in their budget as good as he is. I mean, he is a consensus national top 100 type player. And in a normal year, this would be a guy Texas would be trying to break their back for. But they got to wait out Royal. They're recruiting this sales kid who's in town right now. Those guys would cost half the national debt to get them on campus at the same time. There's just not room for everybody. It's certainly not from an accounting standpoint. So Texas is in Julian Caldwell's top 3. That feels like an Oregon-Texas Tech battle. He's going to announce his commitment on May 9th. So he's scheduled to take his official visit to Texas on the weekend of June 19th. So presumably he'll cancel, I think, why would you announce your commitment on May 9th if you were then going to take official visits? So, and why would you do that unless someone's made you a financial offer that motivates you to undercut your negotiating leverage by still taking visits? So to me, that's Oregon and Texas Tech. Curious that Texas is in the top 3. It kind of makes me think this kid's going to Texas Tech and they want Texas to be listed in the top 3. I don't think Oregon would care. I think if this kid signs with Texas Tech or commits to Texas Tech, they'll want it Tech over Texas. They love that. They love that. But in reality, Texas isn't talking finances with this kid right now, not like we know they are with their primary targets. So that's the latest on Julian Caldwell. Let me look back into the chat. I've been going for like 45 minutes now. Is there anything I'm missing? Rodolfo says, Catch, give us a nugget. Well, it sounds like Smoke Matthews may be a little bit banged up. I don't know if we'll see him on Saturday. I reported in Truths and Lies over at Orangebloods today that there's this conversation that Tyler Atkinson is a little bit of a disappointment this spring because I don't think he's going to have a big role on this year's team. I think that is one of the real surprising things. If I told you in December when he signed on the first signing day that Atkinson wouldn't have a real role carved out for him when the season arrives and he won't be hurt, and it's not necessarily like some sort of reflection on him talent-wise, but from a prototype standpoint, he is more Rasheem Biles and Ty Anthony Smith than he is anything else. So he's playing behind. He's getting second-team reps this spring because Ty Anthony Smith has been hurt. But Will Muschamp confessed a week ago today, yeah, Smith and Biles are very similar from an athletic body build style standpoint. Atkinson is kind of in their category. So he's third when everybody's healthy at that position. I think if you want a nugget, I think the best linebacker among the true freshmen this spring might actually be Kosi Okpala, who obviously doesn't come in with a rep of Atkinson, but has played well enough that everybody will tell you, well, that guy's going to play this year. Even though, again, a little bit like with Atkinson, it's like, okay, we'll be on special teams. Is there anywhere he gets on the field and gets in a rotation or in the 2 deep? And what will that mean? I think he's at least even with Atkinson right now. I think both of those guys, along with Rocky Cummings, all players that they think have chances to play as true freshmen, but only one of those guys got a massive, massive deal to sign with Texas. And I don't know. I haven't had anybody really give me any response yet to what it will mean if that guy doesn't get on the field a whole lot this year, because they've got Rasheem Biles and Ty Anthony Smith kind of blocking his progress to a certain extent, even if he's not completely ready, which I think is probably the case. I think what's really interesting is Biles goes pro after this year. Do any of us think that Ty Anthony Smith is definitely going pro? I don't. I would expect Ty Anthony Smith will be back next year. It means Atkinson, to get on the field, is going to have to be better than a senior version of Ty Anthony Smith, which is good for the football program, right? It would seem you would think at that point that's a really high level of football player that's playing will linebacker at that spot. If it's kind of a battle between those two guys. But I don't think it's as easy as Atkinson just gets to take a starting job at any point in the next 2 years just because they thought he was going to be that guy when they recruited him. I think the recruitment of Rasheem Biles to a certain, and I think they did the right thing. This is not a criticism, but I think that taking Biles in a 2026 context really blocks Atkinson's ability to get on the field. And a guy that doesn't see a ton of playing time this year then is competing with a guy that will have seen a ton of playing time. Now, look, if Ty Anthony Smith is kind of mid and they think Tyler Atkinson's about to take his job, they might CJ Baxter his ass to the curb. Like, there's a world out there where we don't know the variables that will only be filled in future months. And so we can only guess as to like where this thing goes. Atkinson might be better than everybody and just take everybody's job. But that hasn't happened yet. And he is, at this point, until his body develops a little more physically, he is kind of pigeonholed into this spot where Texas is pretty damn good right now at linebacker. And if he was a Mike, if he was 20 pounds heavier, he's probably taking Justin Crier's job. And they may not be going after this Darius Snow kid, but he's not. Physically, he's more Rasheem. And we knew this. He's more Rasheem. And I knew this when they took Biles. It was like, interesting take. How many 215-ish pound guys do you want on the field at linebacker if you're a World Muschamp? I don't think a lot. He wants big. What did I tell you earlier? They want big guys. Anyway, I'm going to wrap things up here. All right. There's your nugget, Rodolfo. I did an impromptu Tyler Atkinson like closure with, and I don't think anybody else is telling me that today. So there you go. You ask, you shall receive. I'm going to go check on, I got a sick daughter 2 days in a row. She's missed school. I don't think that's ever happened. I need to go be a dad and check on her and get ready for the war room. By the way, scan that QR code at the top left-hand corner. Get orangebloods.com today. Should be a banger of a war room. Truth and Lies came out earlier today. It never stops over at Orangebloods. As a matter of fact, we're about to have like a flood of information, no pun intended, from the Texas offensive coaches availability. I got the wrong ability word. So lots of stuff over at Orangebloods. We'll have lots of stuff to talk about tomorrow on the show. The OB3 coming up later today. I'm not on with Chad. You guys act like Chad and I never do shows before. We do one less show per week than we do typically pre-me at noon by my lonesome. All right, guys, have a great rest of the day. Chris Bennett, thanks for your time. Sandman, Rodolfo, B-Money, all of you guys. Y'all have a great day. I will see you guys tomorrow.